Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Gameplan Hangout Podcast Show website. Um, my name is Leo Howell, and I am joined by Matt Harmon. Matt, how are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm great, Leo. Excited to be hanging out here with you again for another week. Talk about fantasy football and make a lineup that we can eventually not do well on.
Yeah, we'll line up that we will inevitably have to tell you why it failed the next week, because that's just what happens.
We're all here learning together.
Yeah, yes, we're on a podcast claiming to know what we're talking about, and then we're learning at the same time. Well, Matt, this week on the Fantasy Game Plan, we are going to go over our failure from last week, and then discuss some trade deadline topics before getting into this week's matchups. So if you could real quick, in the family-friendliest way possible, explain what happened with Marshawn Lynch and Jordy Nelson, two of our big-ticket items on our lineup last week that fell flat on their face.
Well, let me start with Jordy Nelson, since I was very unfamily friendly when we were talking about this. Right?
Yes, that's why I said that. Is right before the podcast. I would rather not have added on the air.
No, me neither. That was a little inappropriate for our sensitive ears out there that are listening to the podcast. But anyways, no. But with Nelson, it was, and actually, this is good that you asked me this, because I watched the Saints game film and the Panthers game film writing my Black and Blue review piece that I was putting together right before we started here. With Nelson, it was just Cobb was getting more favorable matchups, just getting the targets. And there was that one. If just like, and you mentioned this before the show, if just one more thing had swung our way, like one more pass had gone to Jordy instead of Cobb, and it would have been a big game changer. But it was just that the Saints were. Keenan Lewis actually played a pretty good game, and he was lined up with Nelson a few times. That stood out to me when watching that tape. So it just was one of those days. Nelson has had a great season so far this year, and this was just we happened to pick the one game that he was just didn't work out, of course, and that happens. And as for Lynch, this is something that I'm writing about, right? Like I said, right now. And last week, Carolina, their defense was pretty terrible weeks 2 through 7 against running backs, and then this was the week that their defensive line actually started swarming to tacklers again. In general, Thomas Davis and Sean McDermott, their Panthers linebacker and defensive coordinator, they called out the team the week before and said, hey, no one's attacking the ball, no one's swarming to tackles and ball carries and everything. And so they turned it around last week, and it was against Marshawn Lynch, and that's why it didn't work out, even though, it all the signs pointed that was a correct call, but it just, sometimes things change around here in a hurry. So it was just happened to be two of our guys in our lineup. So
yeah, sorry, I was laughing at you and also at seriously. If somebody, like, there's not enough people who care about this show to start a drinking game of it. But if you did, and the drinking qualifications were me making number fire references, then you may want to fear for your life this week. But
you could be in the hospital.
My editor over at Number Fire, JJ, just chatted me as soon as we started the show and said, "Don't do the podcast. Baseball is on." I responded, "I don't care about no baseball," and he responded, "I don't even be in the game," which that's one of those quotes for fantasy that's just going to live on forever. And for regular football too, but I feel like fantasy people appreciate that a lot more. But
that was the greatest thing. I mean, when I read that tweet, I was like, the world could end right now. I could never see my family again. I could burst into flames, and everything would be okay because of that. That was just perfect.
It's such a great. It's a classic. Just
I don't. Yeah, game.
CJ, I don't even be in the game. K response.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's perfect. There's beautiful things out there in the world. There's beautiful oceans. There's the Grand Canyon. There's mountains. But that was the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. That's that quote.
um, so yeah, let's talk real quick about some uh, trade deadline stuff. The NFL trade deadline has actually just passed, and the only deals that happened on the trade deadline dealt with my Buccaneers trading away players um, because Lovie Smith apparently just doesn't like. No players play well in Lovie Smith's system. He has to find the right ones, and he hasn't found a safety who can play in that system in about 10 years. So, so he traded away Mark Barron for nothing, despite him being a first-round pick a couple years ago and not really being ever bad. He's never been good, but he's never been bad. And Major Wright has been bad, but now he gets to start. So whatever. That what I'm saying is target the Bucs defense all the rest of the season because there's no talent there except for Gerald McCoy and Levante David. So passing game, like tight ends, there's nobody who can cover a tight end in Tampa anymore. So except for Levante, but they don't always put him on tight ends. So, but moving on, we're going to talk about buy low candidates. The fantasy trade deadline probably isn't passed in your league. It probably waits until a couple more weeks from now. So you've got a couple more weeks to make trades, and buying low is one of the best ways to get the best value, is to pick a player who has favorable schedule ahead, who's been underperforming, who may be a little under the radar, and selling high on other players. And the selling high part is just so tough to figure out. Like, obviously a guy like DeMarco Murray is a great sell high if you think he's going to get hurt, but if he doesn't get hurt and he keeps doing what he's doing, selling him high is the dumbest thing you could possibly do. But we won't breach that topic this week because that's a whole other can of worms. But we will talk about some buy lows, and I will start with one of my favorite buy low candidates, and it's one that I wrote about today for, you guessed it, numberfire.com. Andre Holmes, Oakland wide receiver. And it's really weird to think, hey, you know what I really want to do in fantasy football? I want to trade for a wide receiver who plays for a team that's only scored more than 14 points once this year. That sounds like a really good idea. But it actually kind of is, because Andre Holmes is ridiculous. The article's up at Number Fire. You can go check it out for free there. But basically, I can put numbers of Andre Holmes' first legitimate season in the NFL up against Josh Gordon and Larry Fitzgerald, who both played in similarly bad passing offenses, and the numbers just line up. Like, everything looks so similar in terms of their ability on a per target basis and on a per reception basis. So Holmes is a very good player and maybe undervalued by people in your league. Like, it's going to take a smart person to have him, because he's not a guy who's probably drafted in a lot of leagues, but he is a guy that will be, maybe the Raiders aren't good. He had that one breakout game, but his volume hasn't been. He hasn't seen more than 10 targets other than in that game. So maybe somebody's got reasons to dislike him. This week they play at Seattle. If he doesn't do anything this week, that may be the perfect time to get him, because then he's got games against Denver, San Diego, St. Louis, and a couple against Kansas City, which is kind of a neutral matchup to me, on the horizon. So there's no real tough games after that Seattle game. So if he has a clunker against Seattle, I feel like this is the perfect time to go get him. Or even now, if you can get, I think he's a starting wide receiver week in and week out, regardless of matchup. I even advocate starting him against Seattle, but I think he's a starting wide receiver week in and week out. So I think that trading any starter-worthy player you don't use for him, if you need a wide receiver, is a good move at this point. Like Ahmad Bradshaw. I'd trade Ahmad Bradshaw for Andre Holmes right now, and I feel like that's a good sell high for a buy low, even though Bradshaw seems to just keep scoring touchdowns. I feel like there's some unsustainability to that, particularly once Richardson is healthy, because he is still a part of that offense. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say that the Bradshaw thing aside, I was just going to ask what your thoughts were on Holmes for the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, it's good that you brought up Holmes. He's one that I just wrote about on Football Guys 2 weeks ago. So I had just went through one of his games for reception, which is getting easier to rhyme, by the way. As time goes on, saying it more, it's becoming a little easier. But anyway, so um, a lot of the numbers there are kind of, like it's really raw data because I'm only doing a few at a time. I unfortunately no one's paying me to do this as a full-time job, so I don't have numbers on every receiver or anything. But one thing that stood out to me with Holmes was that he had, I charted him having run in week 6 against the Chargers. They have two good cornerbacks who have not been healthy lately, but they started off the season really well. He ran a bunch of vertical routes. Obviously, he's a guy with great size and speed and everything, and he had a 63.6% success rate versus coverage score, which is really great. You notice a lot with these receivers that I've charted that a lot of them run a lot of vertical routes, but aren't rarely do many of them get over 50% success rate versus coverage scores on the 9 routes, but he was one that was kind of an outlier there. So I thought that was a good sign, but then at the same time, he obviously is a guy who has problems with, he's not always a consistent catcher, which I don't really care about. I know some people will, exaggerate and say, well, he can't catch, but, I think that's an exaggeration. He has some pretty decent ball skills, just he has little hands. But anyways, I think Holmes is a pretty decent play going forward. I see him kind of more as a wide receiver 3, but if you want to say he's a starting guy, I mean,
Well, I mean that makes him flex.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I agree with you in that sense. That you can start him every week, especially in good matchups. You can expect games like that one against San Diego where he really had like an outburst performance. So I like that call. And you probably can get in, depending on your league, you can get him cheap because just because he's a Raider or whatever. And
like somebody picked him up because they saw him score a touchdown or whatever, but they may not really know much about him. So definitely a guy to target if you, especially if you need a wide receiver, if you've got a bunch of running backs. Like that's always an ideal situation. Is just deal a decent running back you don't use for a wide receiver, because at this point, if your bye weeks have passed, you may not need to use your backup running backs all that much anymore.
Although I'll say if you have decent running backs that you can't use, you're a lucky one this season.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, definitely. Although I play in some Yahoo leagues where there's no flex and you only start 2 running backs.
Yeah.
So in leagues where I started with DeMarco, Jamal Charles, and then a third running back who's still healthy, like Andre Ellington would be an example there. Like I don't need any of the other running backs I took, and so if I hit on any late round running back there, then I'm just trading them right now because I don't need them anymore. So those are situations. But like if you don't draft like me and take every running back under the sun and then take Fred Jackson and Pierre Thomas later, like you don't have extra running backs right now. So
yeah, that's a good point that you kind of brought up there. I just wanted to kind of diverge a little bit. You said, that you're trading away those depth players that you don't use, and I think that's a good point. That at this stage of the season, you want to be trading away depth guys that you don't use for more of these upside, quote unquote upside stashes like Andre Holmes. You want the guys that could, take over.
You need to look ahead at the next few weeks and say, will this guy start for me? And if you're like largely in doubt about it, get rid of him and get somebody who might.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, just as a reminder to anyone who's stashing Josh Gordon, is that you can start planning ahead for that. And if you've got an extra wide receiver as a result of Gordon about to come back, that's maybe a guy you can dangle out for trade too. But we actually just got a question real quick, and so we'll answer it just in between topics here. You can give your next buy low candidate real quick afterwards, but whatever works on Twitter at whatever works too tweeted and said who to start this week, and then just gave us 2 options. The first option is Palmer or Kaepernick at quarterback, and then I'll go ahead and so that we can kind of both stew on that because I think that's a pretty good one. So we can kind of both stew on that. Forsett or Hillman in a non-PPR at the running back spot. So Cap or Palmer. Matt, who do you got in the matchup of Cap versus Palmer?
Well, it's a good question because there are two guys in here that probably the ones I'm going to pick are ones that I wrote about for our new fantasy game plan site. So plug, 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 plug.
Yeah, definitely. But just so that we can get that out there, you can find the new Fantasy Game Plan site by going to fantasygameplan.sportsblog.com. Many thanks to the folks at Sportsblog for um, setting that up for me and getting us on there. So yeah, just you can go check that out. And there's what black holes and champagne supernovas? Is that what you
Yeah,
call it?
black hole. Black
The way you
hole
name
is
things is just
beautiful. You don't have to say anything. Yeah, it's actually a column I tossed around with Sigmund Bloom a while ago about writing for football guys who were kind of stocked up on in-season features. So we get it to do it here. And I thought that was a cute name, and I don't really care what you think. So, anyways, yeah. So I'm gonna go with Colin Kaepernick for the first one. Um, he's facing the Rams. He already tore up the Rams in St. Louis once this season. They've been extremely beneficial to quarterbacks throughout the fantasy season. And the one thing I will say about, I mean, this is a season-long question, so that actually doesn't really, the point I was going to make doesn't really matter because it's more about daily weeks. But while there's no like receiver that you could pair Kaepernick with at this point if you're playing in like DFS tourneys, I still think Kaepernick is a guy that in seasonals can give you a really good week this week. So I'm going to go with Kaepernick for the quarterback question. And do you want me to answer the running back one or let you talk?
I'll go ahead and answer the quarterback one, and I'm going to make this more difficult. And I'm going to go with Palmer. I actually wrote. We're just plugging like crazy here today. I actually wrote.
Well, for all 5 people listening, maybe they'll go read our articles.
I wrote him up in my number fire quarterback streaming article. Palmer's currently in the top 15 in our net expected points, which is our counting production stat, despite missing games. So he's in the top half of starters, even though he's missed games. On a per dropback basis, he's the same as Drew Brees so far this year. And even though Drew Brees is on a bit of a down year, that is impressive. And the Cowboys, have allowed back-to-back strong games to Eli Manning and Colt McCoy. Like Colt McCoy went for 300 yards and ran for a touchdown. Manning had a decent game. And they're just getting banged up everywhere on that defense. They do have decent corners, but like their linebackers are getting hurt everywhere, and it's maybe the magic wearing off a little bit for that defense. And so and Palmer's is a guy that is as rock solid as it gets. Like I feel like not just with his play, but also with his team's play calling, that Kaepernick is a little bit more boom or bust, and I feel like Palmer's just and season long, like that's just like in DFS, Kaepernick has more upside, but in year long leagues, you've just got such a rock solid baseline with Palmer. Like 2 touchdowns, 1 interception is almost a guarantee every time he steps on the field. Like that's just what he always does, and 250 to 300 yards with that is just it's virtually guaranteed unless it's some really tough matchup, and the Cowboys aren't that. Mm-hmm. So if it's a tough matchup and you think you're going to lose, I don't mind going with Kaepernick because he does have more upside. But if you're just looking for best overall option, I think it's Palmer because I think he's way safer.
Yeah, I really like Palmer the rest of the season, and if you're deciding between the two, there's a really good argument for Palmer, and also that I think that game 2 is probably going to have. I could see it being more of like a shootout, more of a contest between two.
Yeah, Arizona away from home. Dallas's defense hasn't been as great as usual lately. Yeah, I can definitely see that being the case.
And Dallas might actually be able to hang with them, whereas I don't think St. Louis at this point, with some of the injuries they've just gone through.
That could turn into a blowout where Cap. You have to hope that Cap gets running yards in the second half because then he won't be getting any more passing volume. As for the other question, was Forsett versus Hillman in non-PPR. Forsett taking on Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, and Hillman traveling with the Broncos to New England. I just don't want. I don't really want either this week if I have my choices, but choosing between the two, I feel like Pittsburgh is the matchup that's more favorable, and I feel like Forsett's the better player, so that's the direction I would lean. Hillman's in a better situation in terms of his offense being better, but New England, like, they haven't been consistent, but I feel like they're a team that, particularly against the run, like, have the people to. They just, it may just be me thinking of ghosts of years past when they've been really good against the run, but that just worries me compared to a Pittsburgh team that um, it's a neutral matchup. I feel like Pittsburgh is a neutral matchup for run and pass, and Forsett's a much better player than Hillman, in my opinion.
See, I think you are seeing ghosts a little bit because the Patriots have actually been pretty. They rank pretty low in anywhere you look against and allowing fantasy points to running backs. So they've actually been especially.
Yeah,
And
maybe there's some metric that I'm remembering that they're good, like, you know, in real football, but maybe not in metrics, but or in fantasy. But maybe I'm just totally misremembering. I'll look for that while you do what you're doing.
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm going to say Hillman actually, and while what a surprise we disagreed twice in a row, that's good.
Well, if it turns out that I'm totally wrong about New England, then I'm going to change my mind.
Okay, that's fair. It's always smart. It's always smart to agree with me.
Yeah, Marshawn Lynch. I'll agree
Pass.
with you.
Nope. Stop that. No, but anyways, so and actually this doesn't really apply here because he did specify that it's a non-PPR league. But I think one of the reasons that New England has given up so many fantasy points to running backs is that they've allowed 45 receptions to running backs and 5 touchdowns. 5 passing touchdowns this season. So that doesn't really apply here, but at the same time, I still think that while he's not going to get points for the receptions, Hillman can make plays as an aerial asset. You know, he could score maybe. He.
By the way, I was totally wrong.
Okay,
totally wrong, and so I agree.
Yeah, Hillman, and he was another one that was in the Champagne Supernova category of the article that I wrote. So. Yeah. I really think that's a strong play.
I mean, Forrest is a better football player, though. Hillman's not a good football player.
Well, I mean, he looks better this year, though. I mean, he's better than Monte Ball, but I still get people.
He's getting vultured all the time too. Like maybe it's just that, like, I don't even own him, and I'm already on tilt about how he's used. So
I still get people coming in my mentions about how, well, why wouldn't they just give the ball back to? Why wouldn't they just give the starting job back to Monte Ball? I'm like, oh my God, don't talk to me about this. But then again, predicting John Fox is nuts. But still, you know,
yes, John Fox. Like, remember all that D'Angelo Williams stuff? Yes. Like, he bred all of that in addition to all the chaos he's caused in Denver. So
that was the stuff of my nightmares when they just gave the ball over and over again to Deshaun Foster when he was clearly washed up, and D'Angelo Williams just sitting on the bench. And then his first year as a starter, he scored 18 touchdowns. But we're not going to get into Panthers sadness here.
Yeah. All right. Well, real quick, go ahead and give us your buy low candidate so that we can get to setting the lineup.
Yeah, this one's kind of a big name, but I actually, and we've mentioned him a lot on the podcast, but I actually think that Marshawn Lynch is a pretty decent buy low candidate if you can get him, which you probably can't because running backs are so scarce. But if you can swing some sort of deal to get Lynch, you know, there's so much going on right now in. And I to be honest, I haven't looked at his schedule or anything to see if it's super favorable or whatever. But I still think that, you know, come crunch time in the playoffs, I think, you know, as playoffs get closer, and Seattle isn't guaranteed to make it in or anything. It does look like they're going to have to do a little fighting to make it in the playoffs. They're going to, you know, start to rely on Lynch more, and they'll make him sort of the main factor of the offense again. I still think that the Seahawks passing game isn't, you know, ready to kind of carry. Not an indictment on Russell Wilson, but just the unit in general isn't ready to kind of carry the thing. But yeah, so I still think that Lynch is going to kind of be the big factor there. And with running backs being so scarce, if you can swing a deal, I think there's so much, you know, like I said, it's weird stuff in the media that maybe people are kind of down on him that he's going to fade away in Seattle or whatever. So that's my one super total anecdotal nonsense about why Lynch might have a better second half of the season than first.
I hear you. I'm going to go ahead and give my second one just real quick so that we can move on and you can give yours too. But pretty much all the reasons for mine are found on the internet at numberfire.com. again, if this was a drinking game, I'm sorry for your livers and kidneys and esophaguses. But Cam Newton has a ridiculous schedule the rest of the way. He's been running now, and when he runs, he scores more points. But he just had that awful game against Seattle because Mike Shula is the worst offensive coordinator in the history of mankind, and because Seattle's actually a good defense, and even though they're performing poorly this year, they're more than capable of playing well and shutting down an offense, particularly one with limited skill position weapons. Cam is the best weapon on that offense, and that's how it remains. I mean, and Benjamin's great, but Cam's the best weapon on that offense, and he remains the best weapon on that offense. So that's my guy, but you can read the details, including just how ridiculous he is when he's allowed to run. At Number Fire, there's an article about why he's the ultimate buy low option. So go ahead and give your last one, and then we'll start talking about Week 9 and make a lineup real quick.
Yeah, I'm actually not even going to give it a second one. I'm just going to echo something that you said on Cam. Is just that was one that I would have picked too, and he has in addition to the running, he has like a stupidly favorable passing schedule for quarterbacks coming up. He still has, he has this game coming up against the Saints. He'll have another one against
the Saints. 5 NFC
Saints.
South games left, and the NFC South have like 3 of the worst 6 pass defenses.
Yeah, it's pathetic. Yeah. So yeah, he has all those games coming up, and then I think he has one against like Chicago or something, who has a bad secondary. So there's a lot of favorable matchups coming up for Cam Newton, and then just other buy low guys. I would consider trying to pluck, give like we said earlier, give up some bench player that you're not even using for a high upside guy who might even be close to getting dropped. Jeremy Hill actually comes to mind. If he hasn't been dropped in your league, I would pick him up because Gio Bernard seems to leave the game every week with some sort of injury, which is frustrating for me because I really like Gio, and I kind of wish that they would split up the carries a little more just to keep Gio fresh. And I think Hill, I'm not like a super huge Hill fan, but if he inherits all that workload, I mean, he's going to be a stud in the second half of the season. So that's one that I would consider, maybe trading peanuts for, because, like I said, he might have even already been dropped in your league.
Yeah, he's been in all the 10 and 12 team leagues that I'm in. He's on the waiver wire. So I've been picking him up this week because all of my running backs are hurt, because every running back is hurt if they're not on waiver or on bye this week.
Exactly.
Let's get into some matchups for this week, and I will also set a lineup at the same time. We're going to work on DraftKings this week again, as we did before, but we're going to go position by position and go through some matchups just real quick and some guys that we like before we actually do. Actually, no, let's just do the lineup, and then as we do those positions, we'll talk about guys that we like at them. So, did you pick first last week?
I think you picked first, but since I blew it with Nelson and Marshawn, right? So
I think I was the Teddy, and then you picked CPAT. So I don't know. We both blew it, but you picked wrong. So you had the best pick. So you get to go first.
That's true. And I mean, honestly, when you picked Teddy, you pretty much were begging me to put Patterson in that lineup. He actually had his best pass receiving game of the season. So
and the most targets of his career. So
right, yeah. So that wasn't like I didn't throw up all over myself with that pick, but
no, because when he plays against zone defenses, he can actually get open. As opposed to the fact that he runs a post 20% of the time against man coverage and just cannot get open on the post. But has he gotten open on the post this year? I haven't seen it. I watched
I haven't. Plays. Everybody asks me when I post these reception questions, who should I watch this week? Everybody's like, well, have you watched Patterson yet? I honestly haven't taken a super deep look into his film or charted any of those plays yet. So. But that's one I kind of want to.
So lazy with the way he runs the post. It's awful. He gets open on curls and digs and drives and just all these other things, and he just doesn't get open on the post because he just he draws an S. He doesn't.
Yeah.
It's
and the frustrating part is he was doing it last season. You can look at the charts I have and everything.
It may be his hip. It may be his hip.
It might be.
Let's not talk about Cordero Patterson because he's not relevant this week.
Right. Well, he is facing Washington.
He's not.
Anyways, no.
I will I will change my Twitter emblem to the Backyard Banter logo. Daryl Patterson scores 15 or more fantasy points this week.
Do I have a side in this, or is this just a...
This is just a one-way bet.
Perfect.
15 or more FanDuel points this week, and I will put the Backyard Banter logo as my Twitter emblem for a week.
Sure. All right. Then I like that. Okay.
I just like making bets that I can't win anything from, apparently.
Yeah.
So you're
I'm still waiting on my week's my compliment for this week. Thanks to your boy Doug Martin, but that's all.
There's nothing definitive there yet. We have not that he could still turn it around and become a top.
If he scores 30+ points every week. No, anyway. But okay, that's enough of our little our marital spat here. But
we're doing the 100K play action $2 entry fee on DraftKings this week, so we could win like 10 grand. We won't.
All right,
but we could.
Never say never. I could really use 10 grand.
10 grand for first place. Well, you'd only get 5, but.
Well, I could really use 5 grand too. But anyway, so my first pick. Now, since I have first pick here, is going to be a guy that we talked about already, and I'm actually going to put Ronnie Hillman in our lineup because no veto. You cannot veto my first pick. Just trust me on this. Like, okay. I mean,
I'm trusting on this. This will be the only exposure to Ronnie Hillman that I have on any lineup this week. But okay.
I'm probably going to have him in.
Oh my gosh, Matt.
What?
He's 5,600. That's
not even that bad. Like, look at who. Look at that. Is he hurt? Oh shit. Sorry.
was limited Wednesday due to a shoulder injury that he suffered during practice.
Who cares? He'll
was able to. We're not going to pick a guy that I'm going to have to late swap later because he's hurt.
Okay, do you really want me to...
You really want me to get snaps because Juwan whatever is going to take snaps from him.
All right, you really want me... I will pick somebody else.
Yes, pick somebody else. Ronnie Hillman sucks.
That's not the point. Well, that really...
And it's Peyton versus... Like, we got to go to narrative street here. It's Peyton versus Brady. Peyton's going to throw 5 touchdowns. He's not going to give the ball to Hillman.
You don't have to go with narrative street, but... That's okay. We've already seen that that's an uncomfortable place to live.
That's a great place.
All right. Well, this
since I vetoed, I'm taking the first pick because we got to start this off on the right foot. We got to build a solid foundation for this team. We've got to do things the right way, and that means that we are going to. I can't do that to you because I just vetoed. I just disagreed with you on it. I was gonna go with Carson Palmer, but
you can do that.
I feel like you would like double hate me for that. So
no, actually no. Go with Carson Palmer. Go with that Carson Palmer because that makes a lot of sense. Because then honestly I think we should put him with Michael Floyd, who's like stupid cheap.
Yeah, because he posted a 0 last week, and no one's going to have him, and he's not going to get a 0 every week. So
exactly.
Would your pick then be Floyd to pair with him?
Yeah, okay. That's my plan.
So let's talk about that real quick. Michael Floyd posted a 0 last week because he dropped a pass or two. He was barely missed on a couple of deep passes, and he was hurt for like a series. Mm-hmm. That's like the perfect situation to play a guy in DFS the next week if he's got a good matchup because nobody's going to be on him. Everybody hates Michael Floyd right now. Literally everyone hates Michael Floyd right now. So you could not be in a better position to roster him, particularly since his price is down to 3,800.
38 freaking hundred.
That's ridiculous. Like Cordell Patterson was 3,300 last week. Like that's minimum salary is 3,000. Like that's so cheap. And Carson Palmer's only 6,800. Like that's such a good deal for a stack that could get you 2 60-yard touchdowns and more than repay their value. So I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, Floyd's probably going to be the reception receiver for this week. So we'll see a little bit about what was a little bit more about what was up last week. Which shows you what a jerk I am, because when I posed the question I asked, I was like, I'm thinking about doing Michael Floyd, but anybody got any other suggestions? I'm like, oh, that was great. I got 10 suggestions. I think I'm just going to do what I originally thought.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I don't know how you're gonna feel about this. I'm gonna just ask you this one instead of just doing it. How do you feel about Shoelace?
Um, Actually, I don't think that's that bad of a suggestion. I'm
Because
cool with it.
Number Fire has Cincinnati's defense as the worst run defense in the NFL,
Yeah.
and he's got 2 straight weeks of 20 touches and over 100 total yards. Um, the the Jacksonville defense has actually been better than people think. It's been the pick sixes and the turnovers that have set them up for failure. So this game could be kind of close. Even the Miami game really wasn't that out of hand. Like the Jaguars were never going to win, but it was never out of hand to where Denard's like totally out of the game. And like we're just setting ourselves up to have like every expensive player we could ever want if we do this. So we're going to do that. We're going to go with
Yeah.
sorry Denard Robinson. I said Shoelace, but Denard Robinson, Jacksonville running back. Only 4,800. So again, like we haven't picked a player over 7,000 yet, and that just means that we can just pick whoever the heck we want for the rest of this team. Cincinnati has not been good on defense this year. Vontaze Burfict is out, and like they're not as good of a defense as they once were. So we're gonna roll with Shoelace this week.
Yeah, that defense is bad all over the place. I mean, I was looking at a lot of different metrics, writing that one column this week, and they're the worst. They're like one of the worst in run defenses. They're one of the worst in pass rush, productivity. It's disgusting. I mean, they really miss Mike Zimmer. And yeah, that's a good pick. I totally am on board with that.
And the Burfict being out like makes it that much better. So.
No doubt. And since you just mentioned that we can kind of go with whoever the heck we want, we can pay up now because we've gone cheap here. I'm going to go with Dez Bryant. I think this is one of those weeks that if you don't have Dez in your tournament lineups, like you're going to be in trouble. He's facing Arizona. They've been terrible against receivers. They just let up all that.
I saw someone tweet that Patrick Peterson when he got hurt, and obviously that was not a time to be choking until we realized that he wasn't like dead, but that it was actually probably bad news for the Eagles that he left the field because he's just been giving up big plays all over the place this year because they still trust him or trust him to cover, and he just hasn't been making the plays this year. So it's just so weird to me that team, that Arizona, is succeeding with their defense not being rock solid.
Yeah. Remember when people over the summer were saying that Patrick Peterson was better than Richard Sherman because he shadowed receivers? That was so cute. I love it. I love embrace debate culture.
Yeah, there have been some ridiculous takes about NFL corners, that's for sure.
Corners, I want to abolish the whole position because every one of them thinks they're the best in the NFL, and then everybody has to have an opinion when it's like, do you even know what you're talking about with cornerbacks?
Okay. Yeah, we can talk all day about corners, but Richard Sherman and Darrelle Revis are the two best in the NFL, and there's still nobody on that level to me. But
I agree. Hey, quick sidetrack since you said Darrelle Revis, and I've been wanting to get your opinion on this. Is what do you think about in the and we're not saying we're going to play like any of these players from Denver's passing offense, but how do you think that shakes out?
I feel like and Evan Silva put this on Twitter today that I think that the Patriots will be best served just playing sides with their corners instead of trying to track anybody down because Peyton's just going to use whoever's got the better matchup anyway. So if you can just get guys to where you're playing them on sides and you're able to just have them, I don't know, kind of have some consistency in the way that they're playing, and it's tough to disguise coverages and mix up coverages against Peyton, but you can try to do things like that, as opposed to like when you have him shadow Demaryius and then they put Demaryius on one side and trips to the other and run a pick play on that side. Like, what good does it have? What good use is it to have Darrelle Revis on the field? Like, and that's the same argument that people make about Richard Sherman being on one side of the field is you can just put guys on the other. But with the Broncos and the way that they run their offense, like, having an elite corner doesn't make you good against the Broncos. It's having a pass rush and playing tight enough coverage to defend the hot reads and contesting and challenging and pressuring Peyton and his receivers rather than having some elite corner who's going to take out their best receiver, because it's not about the receivers, it's about Peyton Manning.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen people kind of fumble around like, oh, Revis will follow Sanders because he's quicker, and Browner will follow Demarius because he's bigger, and it's like,
You're making the argument that they should just stay on one side because Browner can cover Sanders. Sanders isn't,
Yeah, like Sanders and Thomas are both freaking good, so like I don't see why.
Browner and Revis are both good. I mean, Revis is better, but
maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, Browner's kind of, you can tell that he hasn't played football in a while at times, but I mean he's still, I'd take him over Jonathan Banks, but we won't talk about how bad
isn't it Jonathan Banks?
Well, that's how it's spelled, yes. So that's how I have to say it to myself in my brain. But I'm gonna go ahead and you picked Dez, so I'm gonna make our next pick. I'm gonna go with Mike Wallace.
That's great. This is gonna be my first one actually.
Playing at home against San Diego. San Diego's bad on defense. They are bottom 6 in the number fire metric right now. And Wallace has just been really consistent this year, and he's just middle price for consistency. Like he's scored like 5 touchdowns in 6 games or something like that. And then against Jacksonville, like they barely had to pass, and so he didn't play, so his price stayed down. It actually dropped 600 on DraftKings. And so I think that's a perfect time to play him against San Diego. San Diego's offense is good, so Miami's either going to be behind or it's going to be close. And San Diego's defense is bad. Their corners have been injured, for the past 3 weeks or whatever. So I just think it's a great situation for him. He whined enough last year to get the ball this year, and they've just been feeding him left and right. And it's a good, like I said, it's a good matchup and it's a good situation price-wise to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's a great pick. That was gonna be one I picked at some point. So I totally agree with you there. I'm struggling with this next pick.
Yeah, I mean we've got running back, tight end, and flex left, plus our defense. Why don't we, as we think about the next positions, why don't we collectively pick our defense? And just kind of look at some of the matchups that maybe we want to avoid this week, matchups that are tougher. We talked about the Jacksonville-Cincinnati game. I think that this maybe isn't the best week to use a Cincinnati running back. I think that the Jacksonville run defense is actually good enough at stopping production that it's not as obvious as a play as it would seem.
So yeah, I mean I agree with that, but it's like I don't know if you can really go away from Gio at this point.
Well, with injury stuff and with the Jacksonville defense, like
okay, excuse me, I mean in like a season-long league, but not
season long. Yeah.
Not in a daily league. I'm probably not playing Gio.
I mean, it depends on who you've got, but with most rosters, you're not going to have other better options. Like there are leagues where he's my third running back, so. There are leagues where I may not start Gio this week, but for the most part, yeah, like you're going to have to, in season long, go with him. But I don't think I'd go with Hill this week unless Gio's out. If Gio's out, then Hill gets all the volume, and just by volume alone, he's worth it. But and then the Tampa Bay Cleveland game, this is one where you can play either defense, but other than that, I don't think you want anything from this game. People are asking me all the time about the Tampa Bay running back situation, and here's what my response is to that, and I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts on it as well. The offensive line is terrible. The play calling is terrible. The passing game isn't good, and the defense isn't good. So even if there was a good running back, it's the worst possible situation for a running back in the NFL. There is no, like people say, like, well, Jacksonville's line is bad and Denard Robinson's doing well. Well, their defense is actually relatively decent at times, and their play calling is better because they're not coached by Lovie Smith. So it's just, and a quarterback's coach who was at Southern Miss last year. Like, it's just not, there's nothing good about the Tampa Bay situation right now. When they run, it's predictable, and then they get behind and they pass, and it's just, there's nothing there's nothing good about the Tampa Bay running back situation. Yes, Charles Sims is a better PPR option than Bobby Ray and Doug Martin because he's got better hands. But otherwise, like, you don't want a part of it. Bobby Rain's probably going to get the most carries from here on out, but by maybe like one or two per game, and it's going to be some weird, ugly timeshare that you don't want a part of. If you're in a PPR, get Sims, fine, whatever. I feel like people are way overstating what he's going to do as a rookie, particularly considering that he's been on a bad ankle for the past 6 months or 6 weeks, or 10 weeks actually, I guess, doing nothing. So I don't think that it's a good situation at all, and I don't think it's one that people should be obsessing over as much as they are, and particularly not against Cleveland, who, it's not like this is some super easy matchup. Like, Cleveland's defense hasn't been as good as it should be this year, but you're not talking about some epically bad, like, this isn't last year's Chicago Bears run defense. Like, Cleveland is, they're like slightly below the middle of the pack, and that's not a good enough matchup for the Bucs to run the ball.
Yeah, Cleveland's a bad run defense, but you're right. They're not like epically bad, but yeah, like you were saying, exactly.
Yeah.
But
it's not a bad enough, like, for me to trust a Bucs running back, it would have to be 2013 Bears defense bad.
Yeah. In that game, both, again, back to that column that I wrote, both were black hole matchups. So, like, theoretically, you can exploit the Tampa Bay secondary. Theoretically, you can exploit the Cleveland defense. But both of those are so bad that, like, what? Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess I could, like, the only thing I would say are that, like, I could see the validity in streaming Brian Hoyer this week. I think I actually have to in a Jay Cutler bye week. But
even like, I would rather, and I'm curious to hear what you'd say on that. I'd rather start Derek Carr against Seattle than Brian Hoyer against the Bucs. For game flow reasons and for matchup reasons.
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't hate it if you went that way. I don't really feel strongly either way. So, but it didn't jump out to me right away immediately.
I will say that option. If Jordan Cameron gets cleared early and is practicing and is definitely going to play, Jordan Cameron's definitely a guy you can play, anywhere in DFS or whatever as just kind of a low salary guy because the Bucs aren't good at covering tight ends. But other than that, there's nobody in this game that you want.
Yeah, that's kind of the X factor there because people have been asking me this week about Andrew Hawkins. Like, do you play him against Bucs secondary? I'm like,
In season long, if you've got him and you have a bunch, if you've got Julio on a bye week or whatever, sure, fine, but.
Yeah, but in daily leagues, Dwayne Bowe is cheaper than him, and he's facing the Jets this week, and I could see that being a better play in a tournament than Andrew Hawkins.
Yeah, Hawkins. I mean, DraftKings with full PPR, maybe he catches 6 passes, but Hoyer's just been so bad that I'm not sure you can trust that. I like Hoyer, or I liked Hoyer earlier this year, and he's just kind of he's gone the way of Fitzpatrick for me. That once I liked him, he started playing bad, so you can blame me for that.
What a surprise!
So let's take a look at another game here. We mentioned Washington, Minnesota when we talked about Cordero Patterson. Robert Griffin III is apparently back. How do you feel about the Washington offense with that news? Does that upgrade Alfred Morris to you? Does that upgrade Pierre Garçon and or Deshaun Jackson to you? Does that upgrade Jordan Reed? How do you kind of process that information for season long and for daily?
Right away, I don't think that it makes any of them this week that much better than they were previously. Maybe Garçon because he and RG3 have had a prior connection before, maybe, but honestly, probably it doesn't really change much to me right away. Griffin wasn't looking great before the injury. I think he's kind of one of those, like a painter. After he dies, we love him, but he wasn't playing great before his injury. I think that's kind of made him more highly regarded, and he is a great talent, no doubt about it. But we were all nervous about him before this. Before he got hurt. So I'm not super thrilled about him, and I don't think it really changes much for me. I'm fine if you want to pick him up in a season-long league, Griffin that is, but the other players, especially Morris, I'm so down on Morris lately.
See, I think it helps Morris. Morris, and I think that that's a situation that you can start to exploit immediately. Morris is below 4,000 on DraftKings this week, and it's DraftKings, so he
Wow.
doesn't, it's you don't get PPR
Yeah.
bonuses with Morris, but like I feel like that's not a bad play. Like I'm probably not going to use it all that much, but I don't feel like that's a bad play.
Hmm.
Minnesota's not great on run defense. They are actually pretty decent on pass defense. Their pass rush is pretty good, but um, like I don't hate that play, and um, he like you can quote sample size issues if you want here, and you can quote other factors like offensive line play in general, offensive play, but he's just better when Griffin's. It's just the element of Griffin's running and just the way that the offense is better when Griffin's under center because newsflash, Kirk Cousins is not good, and we found that a lot collectively. Um, it's just a better situation. So I don't hate Morris. But yeah, if Griffin's on your waiver wire, like pick him up and you can play him this week, even though Minnesota's run defense or pass defense is pretty good. But um, with that said, in terms of a defense this week, just kind of doing our start from the bottom and find the first acceptable defense you can find. Um, it's really kind of tough. There's not a lot of bargains here. I'd say that the first one that stands out to me is probably Cleveland hosting the Bucks.
Yeah.
You feel good rolling with that one as our defense this week?
I guess
Because
it's one
if
that
we go like first of all, there's just not very many good matchups. Like we would have
no.
to pay up because like the one you'd feel comfortable about would be like Kansas City hosting the Jets.
See, I'd almost rather just pay up for that though. But you're right.
No, I
I don't.
don't. Well, let's do it. And if we need
Yeah.
an extra $400 somewhere, we'll change it. But let's
Yeah.
go with Kansas City against the Jets because that's just such a lock. Michael Vick's going to turn the ball over 5 times.
Yeah. Like, and it's in Kansas City too, so you even have
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
extra. Yeah.
Yeah. It's outside. Like not only is he going to turn the ball over 5 times, but he's going to get hurt. So.
And then Gino will come in and just keep the train on rolling.
Well, Gino's hurt. Like who's their third quarterback? Like
Is
Todd
it?
Boyd's in the FXFL now. So.
Yeah. Is it Matt Sims? Did they bring him up to the practice squad? I won't say what my friend said, but one of my old college roommate was here watching the game with me. And watching Red Zone channel every time he said some just despicable things about the Jets quarterbacks, like just how poorly they were playing. I might tell you off the air, but I don't think he'll ever talk to me ever again. But just so we
I
can.
don't need much incentive to never talk to you again. So.
That's
I
really
want to avoid that.
that's really mean. It's really mean.
Let's move on. Do you have a next pick in mind for our team here? We can average about 6,000 per player for the remaining 3 spots.
Well, let's look at tight end because those are all really cheap.
Yeah, other than Gronk.
Right, other than Gronk. Even Julius Thomas. How do you feel about Julius Thomas? Because I mean,
I was just thinking about that, and New England's pass defense. See, this is maybe where I got mixed up. Is the New England's pass defense is actually pretty decent.
yes, that is where you got mixed up.
But Peyton to Julius Thomas is matchup proof.
Yeah, and I feel like we kind of want a piece of that game.
Yeah, and like I said, Narrative Street. He's going to want to outshine Tom Brady maybe one last time, then maybe never get a chance to do this again on a big stage. So, yeah, I'm totally cool with Julius Thomas at 5,600. Like that's just for 1,000 more than Larry Donnell, who may not even get a catch. Like I'm totally okay with going with Julius Thomas.
Yeah, like the tight end pricing on DraftKings this week is pretty crazy, except Gronk.
Yeah, exactly. Except for Gronk. Also, what's pretty crazy is the fact that Arian Foster is $1,800 or $2,800 more than the third-ranked priced running back.
Yeah, which is Jamal Charles.
Absolutely nuts. But yeah, Arian Foster and DeMarco Murray are ridiculous, and I wish we could get them into this lineup, but we can't. So we've got 2 spots left. We got a running back and a flex. Since you picked Thomas, even though we kind of agreed on him, I've got to pick this next one. Let me get my defensive rushing targeting stuff here. I'm kind of tempted, even though it's not a great matchup, and I'm going to want your approval on this. I'm kind of tempted to go with Le'Veon Bell because he's got to score a touchdown eventually. He's got to score like 2 touchdowns in the game eventually. Like he's just got to. Like regression to
Does
the
he?
mean. It has to happen. It has to happen. He has to score a touchdown. He cannot continue to be used as often as he is and not score a freaking touchdown. Like it's just absolutely absurd that he does not have a rushing touchdown since week 1. It's just nuts. I guess I shouldn't play DFS trying to bank on things that I think should happen, but he should score a touchdown.
You should not bank on Todd Haley's red zone offense. Well, Todd Haley / Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah, that combination of red zone justice offense is not. That's not fair. I mean, it is gross. Like every time they get in the red zone, it's like, well, there goes Le'Veon Bell jogging off the field. Here comes LeGarrette Blount or Ben Roethlisberger autoing to a pass. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just
he's never going to score
bad situation all around.
He's never going to score another touchdown again.
Okay, well, this is also a bad matchup, but the price is ridiculous. How about LaShawn McCoy for $5,200 against Houston?
Yeah, I don't hate that, but
again, this is kind of like one of those, like, I feel like I'm on both of these. Like, these both stand out to me as, like, these guys are underpriced for what they should do. And I feel like that's where we kind of get into, like, that's a decent tournament play, but there's no, like, safety in that at all because they're both tough matchups.
Yeah, no, and here's why I actually like Bell, and I'm going to actually allow you to do that. Wave my magic wand and allow you to do it, but... No, so I think the good thing about Le'Veon Bell on DraftKings is he catches a lot of passes, so he always has a super, super safe floor, and you're right, he's got, I mean, I'm not going to say he's got to score a touchdown at some point, but, like, if he does...
He has to score a touchdown at some point. He has to score a touchdown at some point.
If the stars align and he does score a touchdown, then with that safe floor, he's going to have, like, the potential for him to have a ridiculous week, I feel like, is so easy.
Yes, and the fact that he's 2,000 less than Murray and Foster, and the only reason Murray and Foster are more expensive is because they have scored touchdowns. Because otherwise, like, their numbers are pretty close in terms of overall, like, yardage and volume. Like, Bell's a little lower, but...
I feel like people will see, like, ooh, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, I don't want to play the running back. So, yeah, I think that, sure, I like it.
All right, well, we got one spot left, and we've got 5,300 left to spend.
Stevie Johnson at 53,000.
Okay, Matt's back. Sorry, you dropped for me for a second there. You like jinxed us before the show by talking about how
I know. I know. I've had a few problems.
We're good.
Well, Stevie Johnson's 5,300. That's what I was saying while you were away.
Stevie Johnson. You couldn't guarantee me like a third place in this GPP to get me to put Stevie Johnson in there.
No, I would. Yeah, that's disgusting.
And if you say Odell Beckham Jr., I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Okay.
Are you going to say Odell Beckham Jr.?
I was going to make an argument for Odell Beckham just because
it's a rod. You will not. There's no way.
Look.
How much is Ruben Randall and how much is Odell Beckham Jr.?
I don't know.
Ruben Randall's 5,400. I would much rather us go with, if you want to get a piece of that game, I'm fine with it if it's Ruben Randall and we can change our defense.
No, I don't want to change the defense. I like the Mike Vick guarantee.
Okay, well we're not playing Odell Beckham Jr.
Okay, that's fine. Look, no, that's fine. Chill. Like, I wasn't even really gonna say it. I was gonna make an argument for it. So settle down over there.
Just the fact that you're even thinking about it, like, don't poison our lineup with thoughts of Odell Beckham Jr.
I've got too much draft Twitter running through my veins, I guess.
Yeah, I'm channeling my inner Davis Maddock.
Yeah, you clearly. I don't even want to
He's
drop
not good at scoring touchdowns.
No. What about? Well, we just talked about LaShawn McCoy. Do we potentially want to throw him in at that price point?
I feel like we're chasing with both him and Bell. We're chasing the inevitable touchdown breakout that, maybe we shouldn't double up on that. And for some reason, I just like wide receivers in the flex more.
I totally agree.
So Which brings me to how do you feel about Andre Holmes?
I'm cool with that. You're probably going to tell me no, but I thought about Dante Moncrief too.
If we knew right now that Reggie Wayne was out, I'd be okay with it. Um, is Reggie Wayne supposed to be out?
I really feel like he's. Oh well, now I'm reading an update from the 27th. Is he relayed Monday? Chuck Pagano relayed Monday that Reggie Wayne is ahead of schedule. So maybe not.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, right. I don't know.
See, I feel like that's chasing last week's points too. Like he's not going to do what he did again, and his price went up accordingly. So,
Yeah,
like I'm
I
just
just kind of
worried
want to,
that.
like I said, I just want a piece of that game, but I don't really care about it.
Sure. Well, if we want a piece of that game, I'm totally okay with changing Julius Thomas into Dwayne Allen and then upgrading our flex even more. Do you not like Dwayne Allen? How do you not like Dwayne Allen?
I love Dwayne Allen, but like, there's been more than one week where he's had that, like, he catches a touchdown, but then he gets, one catch otherwise or something.
Well, yeah,
I
but
don't
he's
know.
4,100, so a touchdown is like yeah. Last week he had one catch for 21 yards and a touchdown. That's 9 points. That's double his value, and you usually want to aim for like 3 to 4 times value. So like he's at a price where if he scores a touchdown, which he's done what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times this year, he's gonna meet his value almost guaranteed. And it like this should be a pretty good game for that. I don't know.
Well, the Julius Thomas play was really attractive, but I have okay, so let's just theoretically say we put Dwayne Allen there, then who do we want to put in the flex spot?
Okay.
I'm looking at that now, and like no one's really jumping off the page right away.
Well, we would have 6,800 left, which
Yeah.
would put into play one of the two main Cincinnati players. We could put Bernard or Sanu. I'm not really crazy about those. Um, and then Marshawn and Garcon would be the next two. And even then, they're super cheap, like below the price that we're looking at. So I don't think, just with the way our lineup has gone, we need to just stick with what we got. So we'll go back to Thomas.
Agreed.
I'm cool. I'm cool with Holmes. Um, I'm cool with um, Terrence Williams again. Oh no, we have Dez. Never mind. Um, I'm even cool with Anquan Bolden, even though you mentioned earlier
No.
that. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
No.
I'm not gonna even argue it. I've shut down like multiple of your guys, so I'm just gonna let
No. No old players.
whatever. No old players
No old players.
here.
Okay, well I'm cool with. Well, hey, what about Patterson? He's got. No, I'm kidding. I'm cool with Andre Holmes. I like Holmes.
Andre Holmes. Okay. So that's Carson Palmer, Denard Robinson, Le'Veon Bell, Michael Floyd, Des Bryant, Mike Wallace, Julius Thomas, Andre Holmes, and the Kansas City Chiefs defense against Michael Vick and the Jets. So that is our lineup for this week. We're entering it on DraftKings. Let me pull up FanDuel real quick just so that we've got. No, FanDuel logged me out, so I can't access their stuff. I was just going to say take a look at their prices this week, but since I don't have it, we can't because I don't want to waste everybody's time as we wrap up here. Do you have any final thoughts on Week 9? Any games we maybe didn't touch on? Things that you observed that we haven't talked about yet?
Just one thing real quick for me is that I think that there's a lot of utility in trying to get into some of these daily contests that allow Thursday games because I think there's some fairly obvious plays, like Mark Ingram at his price point on FanDuel especially. I mean, he's below guys like Zach Stacey, a few other names that really jumped out that now I can't think of. He's really cheap on FanDuel. I think it's worth getting in some of those contests just so you can play Ingram and a few other guys, but specifically him.
I don't disagree there. I actually just pulled it up while you were talking. I'll let you stall for me. Yeah, Ingram's 6,100 on FanDuel on a Thursday contest, which puts him below. Yeah, Zach Stacey, Bobby Rainey, Andre Williams, Jared McKinnon, Niall Davis, Lorenzo Talafero. Like, he's a much better play than all those guys. Also, we talked about Cam earlier. Cam is 7,800 on FanDuel.
Hmm.
Um, Starting a lineup with Cam and Mark Ingram, lets you do pretty much whatever you want from there on out. So I'm totally cool with that as well. I think that's a good, like you said, this is a good Thursday night matchup. The only thing is it's Thursday night, and so it's bound to be weird in some way. But
Right.
yeah,
And
that's the risk we kind of have to
in
take.
that weirdness, just my feeling as I ponder through things is since it's outside in Carolina, that's all the more reason that I think Ingram's going to have a big game, because I think that they're going to have to they might have to like run the ball more because New Orleans is as ferocious as they are away from home. So just a thought.
Fair enough. I hear you. Well, from my perspective, looking at the matchups this week, like I said, for season long as well, like in particular, like start Cam this week, start Ingram, start Kelvin Benjamin,
Yeah.
um, all those guys. We didn't talk a lot about. We mentioned LaShawn McCoy in passing, but we didn't talk about the Philly-Houston game all that much. Are you comfortable starting Nuke Hopkins and Andre Johnson this week in DFS? Obviously, in season long, I think you should be. But do you like those guys this week in particular?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the Philly pass defense is
Especially
they're a
John.
little better than you think, but they're still not good. Like they're in that weird like limbo state, and this should be a decently high scoring game, even though Houston runs the ball a lot. I still feel like they're going to have to throw, and this would be the team for them to break a couple big plays again.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I think we've pretty much touched on every other game. Yeah, pretty much, because we've talked about Oakland, we've talked about Washington. Are you going to go back to the well? Like, are you seriously going to go back to the well with Patterson this week with Minnesota?
Come on, you know the answer to that question.
Uh, I don't even want to. Okay. And then I guess we didn't really talk about Kansas City. We talked about their defense, but on the offensive side of the ball, like, is this a week where maybe you played Niall Davis because you figured this is going to be a blowout and he's going to get carries? Is Travis Kelce in play for you this week? Do you like Alex Smith? What are your thoughts on that matchup, real quick?
Well, I mentioned Dwayne Bowe.
Yes, Dwayne Bowe, yeah.
Dwayne Bowe is someone I might. And actually, when I was having that conversation about Andrew Hawkins on Twitter, I suggested to the guy asking me maybe you should play Dwayne Bowe for even cheaper. And he's like, gross, Dwayne Bowe. But, I mean, yeah, it is gross, but still. And Smith is pretty cheap, too. He's one I would consider. Kelsey's in play for me. Niall Davis, I don't know if I really want to go that crazy with, like, oh, this is going to be a blowout, I'll play Niall Davis, even though there's some utility to it. Also, did you know Niall Davis, like, if you go to Pro Football Focus and you click on their running backs, like, their premium stats, he's their worst ranked running back that they have on there. I really, that's stuff. He is the worst. I think Andre Ellington is the second worst. Both of those really stuck
Doug
out.
Martin's probably down there somewhere, too.
Well, I didn't notice it. There was another one that stuck out. Oh, Ben Tate is the third worst. I was tweeting about this.
The way they grade running, like, I love PFF. I'm not gonna like question them. They do a lot of hard work. Their running back grades are always weird to me because it's just such a tough place to assign like fault and success.
Well, if anytime you come at the PFF guys about their ratings, and I mean, I don't ever do it. I'm sure you don't either. But like, people come at them like, how could you have this person rated below this person? And like, they'll even tell you like it's a lot about context and all that. And I think that's especially pertinent with the running back. So
yeah, there's just so many moving parts on a running play that it's tough to know sometimes. But
those two just stuck out to me.
Yeah, definitely. And Niall Davis, I don't think Niall Davis is really all that great as like an every down runner, but he does have just ridiculous athleticism that can turn into big plays at any time. So, and he's a little more of a reliable guy than like a Chris Johnson in terms of actually being useful on those plays in between his big. Well, no, I'm just saying like when you think big play guy, you may think like, oh well, he's C.J. Spiller, he's Chris Johnson, like he makes a big play and he doesn't do anything for like 10 downs. Like Niall Davis actually does something in between the big plays. So that's what I meant to say. Like obviously, I'm more consistent than Chris Johnson as an NFL.
Sorry, you just mentioned Chris Johnson and I had to just bust out and laugh.
I don't even be in the game.
I don't even be on this podcast anymore.
Also, great start for Paul Casey in DFS golf. sitting in third in the Kuala Lumpur CIMB Classic something or another. The tournament actually started because it's in Asia, so it's the morning of tomorrow there. So they're already playing. So hope you put Paul Casey in your lineups, everybody, because I did. And Sergio Garcia, I got to use Sergio Garcia in a golf lineup. I'm totally stoked about that for some reason. But
I don't know what the hell you've been talking about for the last several
golf,
minutes.
man. DFS golf. You got to play. It's on DraftKings.
gotta-
It's so much fun. I'll have to send you my spreadsheet one week, and you can just make picks off of it.
All right, you do that, and maybe I will.
It's honestly making random picks off of my golf spreadsheet is no worse than what you're going to do with your football lineups. So.
Wow. With that, I don't even know what to say to you anymore. I was really gonna. I had a great line all queued up for how we worked through our problems together, and not only did we give great football advice on the podcast, but we even gave some, human relationship advice. And what I was really proud of us. And then you did that, and forget you now.
Well, for Matt Harmon, who may never do another show with me again, I am Leo Howell. Thank you for watching this week and watching us at our new home at fantasygameplan.sportsblog.com. You can leave comments there with any questions you have for next week or thoughts on this week's podcast, and I will stop by and check those out. Also, check out the site for some of our work. I'm going to actually compile the work that Matt and I do on Saturday so that you can kind of have a last-minute check before Sunday and just kind of go back and read what we do. So you can check that out so that we don't have to waste time here, giving verbal hyperlinks to things that you can't click on. Instead, you can just go to the site and click on them there. But you can follow me on Twitter at Michael and Cam Newton, at Leo Howell 8 on Twitter. And Matt, where can people find you on the Twitterverse?
You can find me at @MattHarmon_BYB.
At @MattHarmon_BYB. One of the best Twitter accounts out there. I mean, I've got to say, it's definitely one of the better ones.
I'm blushing.
But anyway, that's going to do it for this week of the Fantasy Game Plan. My name is Leo Howell. He has been Matt Harmon. We will be posting an update on the site with some of the things we talked about tonight, including the DraftKings lineup. So go on there and give us your thoughts and tell us how awful it is or how great it is or how you're mad that we took your lineup and all that stuff. And interact with us on Twitter, ask questions, and we will be back at this time next week with more of the Fantasy Game Plan.